This is the Lockpicker 1969, and welcome to my channel, and welcome to the next episode of Interview with a Lockpicker. Today's guest is LockPickingDev. Say hi.
Hello, everyone.
So, to kick this thing off, can you tell us a little bit about how and when you got into locksport?
Yeah, I got into locksport back when I was in college. I switched to computer science. Most of my life, I wanted to grow up be a doctor, and I switched to computer science at my bachelor's degree. And a lot of you probably know who are in the IT or computer science world know how time-consuming that is. And I saw this article on Forbes reiterating that fact. So I I'm a perfectionist in school, so I wanted something to get me away from the computer. And I ran across the Bosnian Bill video online, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do lockpicking. And I uh, I took about an hour a night, every night, away from my homework and school and the screen to pick locks. And it kind of turned into my therapy and my new multiple hobbies.
Yeah, I know how that goes. So, other than Bosnian Bill, who else were big influences when you were just getting started?
There's Bosnian Bill. Wes Pix was one. Get more to him later for sure. Lock Noob was one. Another person that like way back was Michael Maynard, and he went by Gorilla Picking for a while. And he was a big influence of mine because I was still in my early picking days and before I was a member of any forums, and I was a part of the UK Lockpickers forum under a different name, Nothing is Secure, I think it was. And I met Michael Maynard on there,
Okay.
and he had me gather a bunch of locks for him over here in the States because he's based over in New Zealand.
Okay.
And so he sent me a bunch of Medico locks and let me play with them and had some time with them for a little bit. And he got some Peterson picks and everything else sent it to me, and I gathered them all in a box, played with the Medico for a bit. I was nowhere near ready to pick him, so I didn't really pick him. It was more just looking at him, have some respect for his locks. But he ended up letting me keep a pick or two from the Peterson, which I actually still have, which was kind of my influence in pick making later. But yeah, I sent all the locks to him over in New Zealand. We were kind of a pen pal for a bit, and that was a big influence in the lock sport community and a big, I guess, my first taste of it because the lock sport community is just so freaking giving in that sense, and that's kind
Definitely.
of
Yep.
it kind of got me hooked.
So tell us a little bit more about at the point you got into actually making picks.
Yeah, it was shortly after sending the locks off to Michael Maynard, because that Peterson pick was my first taste of a real handle. I feel like back in the day there was the cheap what are they? The Go Soap picks, the Secure Pro picks, the black
Yep.
handles you see everywhere.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, everybody starts with those, and they're great to start with because they're great to break. And those Peterson picks, it felt amazing because it was decent steel and it was manufactured all right, and the handles more than anything were a decent thickness, and that changed everything. And around that time, I started doing more higher security locks. So I was kind of past my American locks and my master, pros. So it was like all those typical security pins and stuff. So I needed a little bit more fine uh, manipulation with my picks, and I needed my hands to hurt a lot less because I was
Yeah,
picking a lot more.
I hear that one.
Yeah, a lot more extended periods of time. So that's what got me into pick making. And I started off in the hardest way possible, as I do everything, and that's by hand in every way, shape, or form. and eventually got into you see in my series where I actually bought a bandsaw and some uh, belt sanders and stuff where it made my life so much better.
Oh yeah. Yep. So as far as when you were getting going, who out there, other pick makers, were really good influences to help kind of guide you in getting started and, um, you know, really helped you get going?
Yeah, there were two that stick out, and for two different reasons. There's Rat Yoke. He stuck out because, I mean, his picks are just freaking gorgeous.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
I'm aspiring, I'm shooting for my brown belt right now. I'm aspiring to get my black belt just because I want to get mine customized with all of his silver inlays in it because those black ebony picks of his with all those silver inlays, I call him the Starry Night of picks. And like, I need one of those. So that was a big motivator alone because those were gorgeous.
Yeah.
And then Wes picks, Wes Poole. He was a really gorgeous pick maker there for a while too. He does a lot of knife making as well. And he actually started showing people like how he did stuff and how he glued stuff and how he um most importantly, which was like kind of a thing of his, applied CA glue to picks. And that CA glue just, oh man, it makes the pick would just pop in no other way. And yeah, that
Huh.
was a big motivator there too.
Okay. All right. So when you're making picks, do you have a favorite pick profile and handle that you like to make, like a style or profile that you like in picks as well?
Yeah, profile, I'm typically a medium hook kind of person because if all else fails, I'll just flag it. Unless I'm in like a really paracentric keyway and I need a low hook. I'm typically a medium hook person. The 301 government stainless, of course. If you haven't seen the uh, the metal tolerances from Christina Palmer, I would definitely look those up. You'll see why that government steel is way better for sure. So sticking with that. And as far as like a pick handle shape, just the ones you see in like my pick videos a lot, half of them are just kind of like that wave. And I find that kind of fits with the length of it and everything, just kind of fits the curve of my hand perfectly. Either that or just um, a flat out, just straight pick feels fine itself.
Yeah, like like I told you before we started recording, that's kind of where I'm at, trying to master that first.
Oh yeah, just the straight pick alone feels amazing.
Yeah. So, can you talk a little bit about your process of making picks?
Yeah, the biggest thing a lot of people are curious about is where I get my woods and materials from. And so, like my woods and stuff, those are pen blanks. So people that make custom like pens that you write with, they get like these what are called pen blanks. They're about uh 1 inch by 1 inch diameter and
Hmm.
sometimes either 4 inches to 6 inches long. And those are perfect to make like two picks themselves.
Yep.
So that's where I get my woods. And you can see by some of my picks that there's like so many different ones. There's ones mixed with epoxy that look gorgeous, and it's just a matter of cutting them down and shaping them. So I do that. My metals anymore, I get my metals from McMaster Car. I
Me
did
too.
make my metals from there for a while.
Yep. I get them. I get my metal from them too. So,
Yeah, I did.
your pen
Go ahead.
blanks, where do you get your pen blanks from typically?
Um, Typically there's local stores around here called Rockler,
Yep.
which carry some
Oh,
yeah, woodworking store carries some pen
oh,
blanks.
that's a woodworker's paradise.
Yeah, I've liked really spending more time in there because especially because I mentioned that lockpicking becoming multiple hobbies, literally every bit of making and woodworking and tooling I've learned to do is because of pick making. It's hitting YouTube and buying the tools and learning it alone. So yeah, walking through a Rockler has been like, ooh, what does this what does this do?
Yep. I don't think we walk out. My wife and I does woodworking too, so I don't think we walk out of there spending less than a couple of $100 when we go there.
Yep. Yeah, it's really cool. It's fun to get into.
Yeah, yeah, I enjoy that place. So,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, other than Rockler, there's a couple online places you could just search buy pin blanks or buy wood pin blanks, and there's a whole bunch of different kinds of blanks you can find. You'll find them. There's some gorgeous ones.
So, can you talk a little bit about? So, obviously, different woods have different toxicities, and they have
Hmm.
different um, effects on different aspects of your. So, there's the dust. There's sometimes the wood itself, and they have
Hmm.
different effects. How do you um, kind of stay on top of that, and also, protect yourself properly?
Yeah, the dust especially, that is again, I've learned a lot, and it's this I didn't learn the hard way because again, I grew up wanting to be a doctor. So I'm on top of my health first and safety first, especially when starting to do tools and any sort of working, but outside is a big thing. So doing my woodworking outside or in a well ventilated area. You mentioned like a dust catcher and getting like ventilation set it up in a place that would be perfect. And then through the pandemic, I bought a whole bunch of N95 masks. And before the N95s, I had like a respirator, which started hurting my head.
Yeah,
And then just normal masks, like normal medical masks, and those were all right. But I mean, anybody that's done a little bit of, dust work, you can see it around your nose as you're breathing in
yeah.
later when you take your mask off. So I've been keeping with the N95s, and I can still see dust around like the crease on my nose, but it's nowhere near inside the mask as much. So yeah, I do that.
I
And as
always
far as like,
Well, I
go
always
ahead.
get concerned when you see that dust at the top of the mask, that it's that close to your eyes as well. And
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, that too. Yeah. So yeah, another thing too is I always, if I'm not wearing my normal glasses, I'm always wearing glasses anymore too, because I have learned the hard way. And it's, oh, the wood dust flakes are going this way, and I can't tell you how many times I've had dust hitting me in my eye and sometimes stay there for a longer period of time. And you mentioning the toxicity, like have paddock, that redwood that's not good to inhale, uh, hit me in my eye and just sit there and I think, oh crap, well, this isn't good. So
no, uh-uh.
started wearing safety glasses too, and that has paid off even more so when I started doing my own metal work and grinding metal. So
Yeah,
it's all very important.
that,
And I learned not to wear gloves when working with
the
moving,
wheel.
rotating tools.
Yeah, definitely not.
I
Um,
learned that when I was with my Dremel and took a lot of skin off. Luckily, it was only a Dremel.
ooh, ouch. Yeah,
Yeah.
no. I wanted to point out for those listening, if you are interested in lockpicking and you want to be concerned and careful about the toxicity, there are a lot of really good references out there and tables that have all the different woods listed on it that will tell you what what potential sensitivities that you need to be careful of. Because sometimes just touching some of these dusts in the woods is toxic. Some of it's toxic for your lungs, obviously, and then there's other ones where it's about the eyes and that sort of thing. But there's a lot of good charts out there that go into all that.
Yeah, and some of those woods that are toxic, even for like touching and rubbing on, you have to seal them to make sure that they are safe to touch and completely handle afterwards. Because when you think about it, when you're picking, my hands sweat a lot. I just
Yeah,
have clamp hands, so that's just going straight into your sweat, and you're absorbing that. Much less what are you touching afterwards, you know?
yeah. So you don't want to use a pick and have an allergic reaction
Yeah.
to your own pick. Yeah, that wouldn't go over very well.
Allergic to lock picking is not the way to go.
No, it's not. That'll cut that hobby short. Um,
Yep.
all right. So when we spoke before, so before we move, I've got another question that's not related to pick making. Was there anything else you wanted to say about pick making?
Um, Not really. There's a lot of great pick makers out there, including ones you've recently interviewed. I love seeing how many people have started making picks now. There's some gorgeous stuff out there. So if you're into it, just go around, look what other people have made because you get a lot of ideas off of it.
Great ideas. Yeah. Okay. So when we spoke before, we got into talking a little bit about how you got into challenge locks. Can you talk about that a bit?
Yeah, challenge locks. I started those along my journey in the Lockpickers United belt system, and I believe that was required for the blue belt.
Yes.
And
Yep.
it was the blue belt. Okay.
Yeah, it's blue
So
belt.
yeah. So I started that, and it was around the same time I was doing pick making. So I had my Dremel and everything to put brass pins in there and brass rods
Yep.
in, and uh, yeah, to make my first challenge locks, and that got addicting itself because I think I picked my first challenge lock before I even sent my first one out. And so you get you get into your head about, okay, what's this binding where, how's this binding what, with whatever cut is in the key, etc. And there's a whole just exactly another hobby in lock picking.
Yep.
There's a whole nother world in challenge locks. And if you haven't heard the name Den Brass, he is like, man, if you have one of his challenge locks, good luck. And there are some amazing challenge lock makers out there and some crazy looking pins, and you'd be surprised like the stuff people can do with pins, from snake pins to just a whole bunch of crazy stuff. But
Yeah.
yeah, when I started that, I figured uh, kind of like the pick making, show everybody how to do it, get some information out there. And yeah, oh man, the challenge locks out there. I haven't dove into them recently. I have a lock jockey challenge lock in front of me, but I would love to here shortly.
Okay. Yeah, I had to learn the hard way because I'd never soldered or welded before starting lockpicking in my entire
Oh,
life. So trying to watch, I've watched yours and other people's videos on pins and like rattlesnake pins. I really wanted to figure out. I was actually going through the process of cutting wafers off of a rod, and then after I had done, I don't know, about 100 of those, um, I'm like, why am I doing this? I can just use master pins as the wafers, and then started to learn that okay, so I had to learn to solder the the end onto the spindle to keep the rings on the pin. And oh my god, the first pin just was completely charred all to hell. But I eventually finally got it, so you couldn't even tell there was a weld there anymore. But or not a weld, but a solder. So
oh man.
it took a
Yeah, I am
while.
such a beginning solderer. And like you just mentioned, like that dawning of, oh, I can use the master pins. That is like invaluable information. Those little tidbits of information as you're going along, because that saves you so much time.
Or making your rings out of what is it 3 millimeter like brass tubing.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So learned that one the hard way too. After
Yep.
making a bunch of rings and then going, why am I drilling into this center of this thing?
This tiny little thing.
Yeah. So what would you say your impressions are of the lockpicking community, and how involved would you say you are in it?
Um, my impressions, kind of like I mentioned earlier, with just the general kindness, is exactly that. The lockpicking community has been nothing but giving since I've been into it. The longer I've been into it, the more it has been. The longer you're in this community, the better it gets. Just
Yeah.
because, people know you, you've been around, you get to get trusted, and that alone, uh, honestly saves you money. You create so many friends, it saves you money. You get locks you've never heard of before that might
Yep.
come your way. Half of getting locks is connections.
Yeah.
It's and generosity. I wouldn't even say the connection, just generosity. That's why there's so many um people that like giveaways or like secret Santas. They'll just give away so many crazy things from overseas to the States because it's hard to get stuff over here from over there.
Yep. And vice versa. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah,
They they really like
it's
getting master
amazing.
locks.
It's like sending them a lump of coal.
Yeah.
It might be cheaper to send that weight wise.
Like, okay, you want some master locks? All right, I can do that. Those are plentiful. All right. So the last question. I was hoping I could ask, what do you do for a living, and if you could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, like kind of like my name, it uh, gives a little bit. I'm a developer, so LockPickingDev. I'm a developer. Mainly do API development. Um,
Oh, cool.
yeah, yeah, just a just a lonely old developer. I'm not a hacker or anything. I've been going to a lot of hacker cons recently, but
Yep.
starting to learn that stuff. But I'm not a hacker.
Okay. So what kind of stuff do you do with that?
With my programming.
Yeah.
Uh, Mainly it's just I work for a company and we just help a lot of people basically get their stuff up and moving. A little bit in the healthcare world and in the vet world. That's about it.
So
Nothing too special.
for those people that don't know what an API is, can you explain that maybe a little bit?
Oh yeah, okay. So an API is so there's a few types of developers. You got the front end, so that's like what you're looking at on the screen, all the pretty stuff. I don't do the pretty stuff. I don't do that very well at all. And then there's the back end, which processes a lot of information and handles your information. And then there's the API that handles the information coming from what you're seeing, going to the back end, sending it to the databases. So I create the interfaces that transport the information from your forms and from your websites to the databases and the backend to transfer to other websites and third parties.
And it does it almost real time.
Yep.
All righty. I I want to thank you. This has been great. This
Yeah,
is
thank you for having me. This is
really,
awesome. I
really.
love this whole series.
Yeah, thank you. I'm trying. we've got some we've got some good stuff coming out here shortly as well, and hopefully something fun for people for the holidays, so people can look forward to that. But is there anything you wanted to tell our listeners before we start signing off?
Um, like I mentioned, I've been going to a lot of cons. If you see me there, come up and say hi and come pick a lock. You can't miss me. I have the blue skeleton hand.
Okay, yep, I've seen that in your videos too. I've definitely watched enough of those.
Yep.
All right,
I got actually got extra credit for that in my anatomy and physiology class.
that's cool.
Yep.
All
Yeah,
right,
come by and say hi.
so I'm gonna wrap up this episode. If you are currently a subscriber, thank you. If you are not yet a subscriber, please hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications and all. That way you can be made aware of new content, new interviews, new giveaways, and the drawings for them. And I would like to thank everybody for tuning in and listening to this episode.